Hiya.
Welcome
to the first old Sodcast on the Jimmy Barnes channel. We're not streaming to my co-host, Not Suitable for Mum, but he is my regular co-host. Perhaps one day we'll be able to do a multi-stream where this also goes to Jason's channel and maybe even Twitch or whatever. But for now, it's just on at Jimmy Barnes YT. So if you're watching this on replay, you've just come across it via the vinyl community hashtag or whatever, then please give us both a follow, a subscribe, I should say, on YouTube at Jimmy Barnes YT. And of course, subscribe to Jason on YouTube. He's got his own channel where he looks at music and records and lots of that good stuff at Not Suitable for Mum. So, hiya, Jason. Thanks for joining me. How are you, mate?
Yeah, all good. Ready for the show. It should be a lot of fun.
Yep. For those who are wondering what the old Sodcast is and why two old presenting it, it's because we wanted to do a music discussion show, something that's pertinent to the vinyl community for quite some time now. It's something I've wanted to do, well, before I had my eye operations last year. I won't go into that because people know already, but I was not able to do live streams for the longest time because I just couldn't really see what I was doing, and I can see now. So after a few months of just sorting schedules and things out, Jason said, are we going to get this done soon and we're going to start the old Sodcast? He didn't actually say that. That was that was me who decided to call it the old Sodcast. But, I'm delighted that Jason's joined me. Jason, what the vinyl community, just before we get going, the vinyl community, do you consider yourself a part of it?
Ish.
Ish.
Not perhaps as much as you do.
I feel more a part of it now. I still feel like I'm on the fringes of it a little bit because there's a lot of what I'd call, and not necessarily in a negative sense, but a few kind of cliques, you know. You can tell like certain people who do live streaming pretty much 7 days a week nearly, and some great people, and they have really good guests on and everything, but I don't feel that much ingrained where I'm like, oh, I want to join them sort of regularly.
Yeah, I'm still sort of really mainly lodged in the old Funko community, but I enjoy doing the music stuff, obviously.
Well,
but I don't.
Hopefully, this will encourage you just to pump out more music content, mate.
Yeah, it's
I know it's you have other things going on and other interests, and I have other interests as well. I mean, music is my main one. I think my channel does reflect that certainly these days, but. If you can sort of leave here tonight and then think, oh yeah, I want to film a load of record collecting videos this week. I mean, that's got to be a good thing, really.
I've got a few things lined up. No, I was meaning more for the point of view of the close-knitness, if you will, right? There's not really any, apart from yourself. I think it's Geeky Heathen when he does do them. He doesn't do them very often. But mainly you're the two sort of like I follow with the music stuff. I'm not really watching this person, watching that person, or the other. I don't have a huge list of people that I pay attention to, shall we say?
If you're watching either live, and I know Richard's in the chat. Hiya, Richard. Thank you, mate, for joining. If you're watching either live or on replay, and you're worried that Jason's not going to watch you, then I'm sure if you give him a sub on YouTube, he will sub back and he will watch it. He's good. He sometimes takes him a while to catch up on videos, but he will watch you eventually. And he'll so don't think that like I'm the only VC channel that he's interested in. He will watch others. That's I'm trying to encourage him to get a little more invested in it, really. But we're not actually going to talk about records today. We're going to talk about music, obviously. We're going to talk about music every fortnight. But we're talking about our memories and not like the history as in, you know, the complete dates of when everything started and ended, but kind of like a bit of a potted sort of look back at some of our favourite and maybe even not so favourite music television shows, the British ones. Of course, there has been American ones, not many of them really transferred over to the UK, but we've got to focus on the British music television programmes today. And there's only one place we can start, really, isn't there? You've got to start with a granddaddy. You've got to start with Cheggers Plays Pop.
Oh, right, okay. That took me by surprise. Okay.
Now then, we're gonna start with Top of the Pops. Now then, I'm not saying Top of the Pops was the first British music show that ever came out. In fact, I think, if my research was correct, I think Jukebox Jury actually predates it.
I was talking about that today with my mum.
Yeah, and we can maybe get onto Jukebox Jury a little bit later. Yeah. That's even for the revival of it in the late 80s, I'm a little bit young. Yes, there was. Yeah. So for those who don't know, Jason is 10 years older than me, so which is good. We've got a nice spread here. He's 1970. I know he looks like 1940. I'm 1980. So Jason is going to have memories of certain stuff from maybe the late 70s, early 80s that I won't have any recollection of.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Top of the Pops began in 1964, ended as a weekly roundup of the UK pop charts in 2006, but we still have it. We get the repeats on BBC4, which, as you know, Jason, on a Friday night, I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, they're good.
I've also been known to do the odd reaction to Top of the Pops on my YouTube channel as well.
Yeah,
they're actually my most popular videos that I put out. I do one a month at the moment, and there's another one coming in a few days. Tuesday, I think, is my next one.
Oh, great! I look forward to that. Yeah,
good. And so Top of the Pops started in '64. When do you think you first watched Top of the Pops, Jason?
Oh, crikey!
If you had to get now, then you probably, if your mum and dad were music fans, then they probably put it on. You know,
I think
when you were just a little baby in arms, really.
Yeah, I would have said possibly even before then, but probably from about 5.
So about mid-70s, 1975. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not going to keep referring to it because it's not pertinent to this, but I'm reading a really interesting book on my Kindle at the moment. It's by Bob Stanley from Saint Etienne.
Oh yeah,
he mentions Top of the Pops in it. It's called the Story of Modern Pop, I think it is, and it's very very thorough. It's got a lot of detail in it, and what with him being, you know, English, British, he refers to Top of the Pops and things quite often. I've just got into sort of like the early to mid 80s point of the book now. It's really good. It's a big recommendation. So yeah, I think my first Top of the Pops memory, I do talk about this a little bit in the reactions that I do. I seem to start having more vivid memories of Top of the Pops from sort of like 1986 onwards, maybe flashes of late 85 sometimes when I see them again. I think, oh yeah, mate, did I what? But it's difficult. I mean, the older you get, I mean, it's your childhood memories. Some things do stay with you, but a lot of stuff, it's just you know, you can't. It feels familiar, but you're not quite sure if
Yeah.
You know, if you did see it, or if it's some sort of I don't know if Mandela effect's the right term, but
well, yeah, but it is that kind of thing. You remember
was it
something
there
in a
at the
certain
time,
way.
or is this a false memory sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think really mine was probably from about that I really remember is probably from the 80s, and most definitely the 90s is all right. It was in my 20s then, but 90s is definitely my era, probably my favourite era as far as music's concerned. Um, but no, there was sort of like brief recollections of stuff. I've got a sort of few notes, things that I sort of semi remember, but yeah, probably the 80s onwards is probably, you know, the main bit. 70s is a bit sketchy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose there's got to be external factors like perhaps your parents, your family didn't watch as much television until you were older anyway. There could be that. I mean,
To a
I'm
certain
pretty
degree,
certain,
yeah.
I'm pretty certain my mum and dad didn't get their first colour TV till I was about 5 or 6. So that was like
Yeah.
85, maybe even into 86. That does sound quite late for getting into colour TV, but I think it was just
Well, yeah.
it was like a financial thing. I don't think they could afford unless they
No,
rented, and I
same.
don't think they like the idea of that. I don't
Well,
think they just wanted to own a TV, but they could only
yeah.
afford to own a black and white one. And you know,
Well,
I think
yeah.
even now my mum says, "Oh yeah, I remember that old black and white telly. It was they were fine. Yeah. We didn't need colour, but you know,
No, I remember my folks getting the a TV from Radio Rentals of all places. That was how we had our TV first of all, and I remember a little red boxed black and white TV that I had in my room, but I couldn't tell you how old I was at the time. That must have been late 80s, late 70s.
I was always jealous of the kids who had tellies in the room because I was never allowed one.
No.
Although, to be fair, come 87, 88, we did have a Commodore 64 in mine and my brother's bedroom, so had its own proper monitor and everything as well. So anyway, that is a bit of a digression. Happy I can into the 364. But yeah, Top of the Pops, take an early memory for me. Seeing the House Martins on it, I always associate them with one of the first bands on Top of the Pops ever saw. So it does tally with kind of the maybe 1986, because I think that would have been when they first charted, wasn't it?
Was it not a bit earlier than that? I'm thinking 84. I could be wrong.
I don't know. That sounds too early for me.
Yeah,
for the
it was
84.
I know the main first song.
They almost had the Christmas #1 in 86, didn't they, with Caravan of Love? And I think it was, I did a video about Christmas #2s last year, didn't I? It was, I think, Jackie Wilson that stopped them from getting to #1.
Well, the main one I know, obviously, main one I know obviously was Happy Hour. That was their first big single.
Yeah, I think Happy Hour. That was either maybe late 85 or sometime into 86. I think.
Yeah, fair enough. I
don't know. For as far as memories go, and it's the same with the UK Top 40, and I will touch on that in a moment.
Yeah.
And my dad was mad for taping, especially off the Top 40, and then I think he took a bit off John Peel and Annie Nightingale in the evenings when we'd gone to bed, sort of thing. I remember House Martins, Happy Hour, Caravan of Love definitely being on his Radio 1 Top 40 compilations. And I don't think he was particularly a fan. I mean, he didn't really buy any music at that point, even for groups that he was really into, like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd.
I think you're right.
What did you prefer? Like, if you had to choose like one or the other, Jason, what would you have if someone said to you, right, you've got to not bother with the other one for the rest of your life, or bear in mind at the age where you'd actually be interested in either of them. I don't mean now in 2023, but which would you choose? Would you choose Top of the Pops every week or the Radio 1 Top 40 every week?
Oh, crikey. I think probably, although I like the live performance, well, live as such as they were performances, I think I would probably say the top 40 on the radio. Reason being is that obviously you got all the songs. It wasn't
you choose to have that and just not watch Top of the Pops is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. Right, and much as I enjoyed it, it's because then there were the singles that perhaps didn't do particularly well. They're not necessarily bad singles, but they didn't get featured the same. So at least with the top 40, you got to hear everything.
Yeah. Now then, you might be able to clarify this for me, Jason. I've got a feeling in my head that Radio 1, although I think they might have ran the chart down from 40. I'm getting the feeling it wasn't till the late 80s or maybe even the early 90s they actually played all of it. They extended it by an hour or so. And then it became a top 40 where they play all, rather than they just maybe recap the 40 to 31. I don't know.
That's a very good question.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if we do a Sodcast about radio at any point, which we might do. I mean, television's more my thing, but you never know. We may get onto radio one day.
All I remember is it was on from 4 o'clock. This was on a Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon. 4 o'clock until 7 o'clock for 3 hours. So when that started, 90s definitely, 80s not sure. Sorry, what's that just come up?
Rob Walker let the music play. Asks if we remember Supersonic. Well, we may get on to. I mean, Jason's shaking his head, and I think that is well before my time. So you might have to fill us in yourself on Supersonic there, Rob, because he doesn't. If Jason doesn't know it, and he's like I say, he's a decade or so older than me, then if he doesn't remember it, then I'm not going to be able to talk about it myself. But go back to Top of the Pops. Out of all the, because I don't know, they split. Fans of it seem to talk about eras, don't they? What do you think your favourite era of Top of the Pops was? Sort of, even if it's like me, if you can associate an era with the look of the set and the theme tune and things like that. What's your era?
Again, probably 90s.
But there was a few eras in the 90s, weren't there?
Yeah, it was okay.
There was the one that was like the hangover from the late 80s. Then it went to that kind of what the BBC called Year Zero, which I never really understood. Sort of 91 to 94, 95. And then there was like that 95 to 98 sort of period.
Yeah.
You get your Oasis and Blur and stuff on.
Not really remembering which titles they had when exactly. I know there were different songs and different titles and all the rest of it. But I think my main era was when early, house music as it was then. So we're talking 87, 88.
Yeah.
When that first came in, probably through to the mid to late 90s, really. So with that sort of 10-year span.
Yeah, I think I'm the same, really.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I mean, maybe it's not that weird, but because I am 10 years younger than you, but I still consider that sort of, even though I would have been 8 when you were 18 kind of thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was like 87 onwards, and then kind of I lost interest in Top of the Pops, maybe I would say probably 97, 98, perhaps, I think. Certainly 98, I think.
Yeah.
And the UK Top 40, although I preferred that in a lot of ways because you just heard everything.
Yeah.
Every 40 songs, at least after a while. Like I said, I think there's something in my head telling me that they didn't play the entire top 40 for a while.
No.
But so yeah, now in Top of the Pops presenters, because I mean, often a show, even if the music on it was never,
yeah,
was never very good.
No.
Sometimes, like, you could sort of forgive like a kind of poor show in relation to music if like there was a decent presenter. Like, what any favourite or least favourite Top of the Pops hosts that you want to talk about?
Well, we won't mention the obvious one. We're not going to go there. Oh, I did like. I know he was a bit of a chirpy, cheeky chappy, but I used to like Peter Powell.
Yeah, you were all right, I think. Yeah, I've seen bits of him from, you know, looking on YouTube for episodes and clips and stuff like that. So and I think he did a few sort of in my kind of late 80s, maybe very early 90s era, but I don't think he was like, it was kind of, he felt to me like a bit of a stand-in, if you know what I mean. Like someone who would bring in, if like, I don't know, Simon Mayo or Mark Goody a diarrhea.
Yeah, well, obviously, I remember them. Yeah, I remember them. Bruno Brooks, obviously, and he did the top. He did the top 40. He did the 40.
I liked him on the top 40.
Yeah,
I thought he had a good voice for the Radio 1 top 40.
Yes,
he was all right on Top of the Pops. A little bit bland, but yeah.
David Kidd Jensen was one.
Well, Rob Walker's in agreement with you there. I was never overly fond of him. I mean, we might get on to Kid Jensen a little bit more later on for a certain other show, but we'll see as far as time goes.
John Peel, obviously, well said. John Peel is an absolute legend.
Yeah, and Rob also liked Jackie Brambles as well.
Yeah.
She was nice to look at, if memory serves. I was a bit young to really appreciate her back then.
I mean,
I appreciate more now, if you get my meaning. I quite liked, not all of them, because some of them were pretty rubbish, but I kind of liked the sort of almost guest host kind of.
I was going to go on to that. Yeah,
in the mid-90s. I remember Jack D doing a couple. He was all right because he kind of deadpanned it all a little bit like John Peel used to, really.
Well, yeah.
Reeves and Mortimer. There's been one on BBC 4 recently that they were presented, and they were just being absolutely wacky throughout.
Meatloaf was funny on it because I remember him taking him. He didn't actually say anything.
Yeah,
but they had take that on, and he went, "Oh, it's take that, woo, yes." You know, Sarky getting hyped up. Yeah, that would have been, when did Bat Out of Hell come out? That must have been early 90s, mustn't it? Bat Out of Hell 2, I mean.
Yeah, that was 93, I think.
Yeah, so it would have been around about that sort of time that he would have presented. I mean, there was a few people. I'm trying to think who else.
Well,
a lot of the comedians, anyway.
Yeah, but as for like your Radio 1 presenters, I don't know if I'd have a very favourite. There again, with Peel, he often used to. I know he used to quite like co-hosting with Janice Long. They sort of
that was the one.
Although Janice Long's not someone who I think I could tolerate in large doses, I think sort of with John Peel, they were quite
like chemistry,
they had chemistry. That's it.
Yeah.
But there were lots. There's the Mike Reed, Mike Smith. I remember, it's one I've reacted to on my channel as well. I remember Anthea Turner doing some in the early 90s.
I believe she did, yeah.
Andy Crane, I think, did one or two.
I don't know whether he's talked about or not, because there was a lot of controversy around him. But DLT as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing maybe he was probably phased out around kind of the mid 80s, really, and then because you don't really see many clips of him sort of past like the 70s and early 80s stuff. But there's we could talk about the presenters for ages. so yeah, we've got least favourites as well, but we'll try and keep it positive and.
Exactly.
So yeah, Top of the Pops. It was an institution, but
very much
it's an institution that really no one cared enough about by the end, weren't it? You know,
No,
2006 it got axed before the previous year, 2005. It got moved to BBC Two.
That's right. Yeah.
The general, I think it got moved to a weird day as well, like a Sunday afternoon or something weird like that.
Yeah, it was weird because you thought about when the charts were on. And yet it was the week before's charts, and then you had the Radio 1 show.
Yeah, it was like almost a week out of date.
Gary Davis, Gary Davis.
Yeah. I've spoke to people. People have sort of like DM'd me and said, "Oh, I've watched some of your reactions on YouTube because, like I say, they for some reason I can't quite figure it out, but they seem to be the most popular videos of mine." But I've had people DM me saying, "Oh, you know, I've got these theories about Top of the Pops and why it got cancelled. You know, it was like some sort of plot. They deliberately scheduled it against Coronation Street in the mid or late 90s or whenever it was. You know, it needed to be, you know, it needed to make sure it was nowhere near EastEnders in the schedule.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's all kinds of, you know, some of the theories are pretty sort of sound. They sound fairly sensible to me.
I think for me, it just sort of, they tried to rehash it. They tried to make the formula different, and I think it just got old. Right, and a lot of I think partly because of the music, you know, all right, this is me going like my parents did. Oh, we don't like your music. It all sounds the same, bloody, bloody, blah. But I've sort of gone down that path myself with a lot of today's stuff. And I don't feel there's the diversity the same as there was. A lot of it sounded very generic. And also, I think to a certain extent, it's starting to take itself a wee bit too seriously. I always like the sort of tongue-in-cheekness of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's I mean, the death of Top of the Pops, that could be an old Sodcast, assuming either of us could be bothered to do enough homework for it. That could be an entire series, really, couldn't it? Just kind of
very much so,
debating that. You never know, and I'm sure we'll get back onto Top of the Pops many times over the coming weeks, months, however long. But you know, I think we've discussed Top of the Pops, and I know there's loads more that we can talk about, but we are trying to discuss. You know, not as many as we can cram in, but certain favourite and memorable, if not favourite, music TV shows. So if you cast your mind back to the 1970s, so Jason, I'm going to rely on you and maybe, hopefully, the chat as well to an extent here. But I would say Top of the Pops is not rival, but kind of like the other side of the coin, really. If you think Top of the Pops is for the kids, the young people, the teenagers, then what do the serious music fans have? On, I think, BBC Two it would have been on in the 70s. I think it ran until, I think, 1988.
I think I know what you're going on about,
Yeah, on about, of course. It began in 1971, by the way, the old grey whistle test. Have you any memories or thoughts about whistle test?
Not really. Oh, I remember Bob Harris, obviously. Whispering Bob, as he was. Because the way it was mainly him that I remember, because he had there with his big teeth and his big bushy beard and his receding hairline, a bit like me really. But no, I remember him, and anybody that ever remembers the Fast Show with the Jazz Club sketch.
Yeah, he was
kind of
parody to an extent.
Groovy.
Yeah, right? It was. I was too young really for whistle test, and I think it was the sort of thing. I think by the time we got our first video recorder, because it was probably a late night thing, and my dad was probably working nights or late evenings, so that was something I think by the time he would have, because there'd be a lot of stuff that he'd probably enjoy on that, because you're more serious rock, progressive
Well, I
rock,
think that was it.
you know, maybe indie acts
Yeah.
into the 80s, perhaps. But by the time we got our first video recorder, which I think would have been 1988, is ringing a bell for that. I mean, that's the year it ended. So he probably, you know, intended to start recording Whistle Test every week, and it ended probably soon after, or maybe even before we got it. So
yeah, I think I vaguely remember the Kinks being on there, but that was the main one. It was that sort of, you know, because of when it was. Obviously, you had the established '60s bands, and then the up and comers. I think Mark Bolan may have been on it, but I couldn't swear to it.
Yeah, I think T-Rex, they probably might have been one of the few acts who could quite easily cross over.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, they had a big teeny bopper following, didn't they? Because of Mark Bolan, who, you know, Swoon, etc. But I don't know. Like I say, this is before my time, really. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm sort of making some assumptions here. But for me, I think T-Rex did have the musical chops where they might have been able to appear on something like Whistle Test and not had sort of letters into the BBC complaining from sort of beardy real ale drinkers.
Yeah, exactly.
Next week, why have you let Mark Bolan and T-Rex on this program? I want just to watch Led Zeppelin. No, I doubt Led Zeppelin ever went on it because
I've no idea. What struck me as bands, well, things like Fleetwood Mac, Jethro Tull, all that sort of. What were they? Prog rock? Would you call it?
Yeah, not so much Fleetwood Mac. Jethro Tull, I think, were quite proggy. I get the feeling they had a fair bit of sort of like maybe folk rock type stuff on.
Yeah, well, that's yeah.
And like I said earlier, I think maybe in the 80s they perhaps went more, and they had different presenters as well. Like they had people like Annie Nightingale. I know, it was either Rob or Richard in the chat mentioned earlier. I don't think she ever did a Top of the Pops, to the best of my knowledge, but she might have been the final presenter of Whistle Test, or one of the final ones, I should say.
Yeah.
I think the one, perhaps maybe not the only, but the one guy I can think of who definitely did present both Top of the Pops and Whistle Test was Richard Skinner. I'm sure he did both.
Yes, I was thinking of him earlier when you said about presenting, and I couldn't. I had the name on the tip of my tongue, and I couldn't. I had his, you know, face in my head. I couldn't remember his name, but yes, quite possibly. What's that?
It's Mark Gilroy. Hi, Gil Monster. Thank you for joining us. And remembers the 9 o'clock, not the 9 o'clock news sketch. Yeah, I think I know what you're referring to there. It's funny actually, because when I was looking up to get some audio clip, well, some video with music on it for a records roundup ages ago, I was looking for something by Matt Berry, and one of his promo videos was and it looked so authentic as well. Was a complete Whistle Test pastiche, and the joke that the video was that, like, and apparently this was I don't know how true this is, but apparently according to the comments and everything in the YouTube video, the thing about Whistle Test was the director didn't like to focus on lead singers. He'd much rather do shots of all the other musicians apart from the guy actually singing. So in this Matt Berry video, you barely see Matt Berry. You kind of maybe catch a glimpse of him briefly in like the corner of the screen, but then they'll pan to a different musician, even though it's obviously Matt Berry who's singing the vocals.
Yeah. It's quite different from the way Top of the Pops did it. And I got a funny feeling a lot of their stuff, if not all of it, was live. Top of the Pops was very much lip sync.
I don't know. Maybe someone in chat might know for certain. You'd have thought with a serious muso show like Whistle Test, you'd have thought that playing live would be a requirement, wouldn't you? I'd have thought. So. Yeah.
Because I don't think they just did the one number either. I think they did a couple of numbers.
Oh, very possibly. Like I say, I mean, you know, I can't speak too much on Whistle Test. I've seen a few clips. And definitely, because I remember seeing a little bit of it. did bring it back for a 30th anniversary special in 2018, but yeah, I don't think that really was popular enough to prompt a kind of proper revival. I think the Whistle Test, and for a lot of these shows that I've got listed here, I think that they're of a certain time. People consume music and consume television in different ways, don't they? So Whistle Test, I think, as I think it was Richard who said earlier, I think it very much hinged on the quality of the music, and it could be hit and miss.
Exactly, it's depending on the artist's work.
I just don't think Whistle Test in the 2020s had really found much of an audience anymore.
I think the closest and we may come to this later, I think the closest you've probably got to it now is something like Jules Holland.
Yeah. I mean, but perhaps get onto that in a bit. I do want to briefly touch upon Jukebox Jewelry, because I mentioned it earlier. As I say, it does actually predate Top of the Pops. It started in, would you believe, 1959. So even before you were born, Jason.
Yep. Quite a long time before.
Its original run was 1959 to 1967. It was hosted by David Jacobs, so I think was like a BBC, what they called it back then, light program disc jockey, I think. It was revived in 1979, only for seemingly one series. The host was my very favourite person in all the world, the supercilious shithouse Noel Edmonds. I'm glad we got till this point and didn't mention Noel Edmonds. And it was then given a third revival, and amazingly, it's not been on since, from 1989 to 1990 by Jules Holland. He was the host of that. Any memories of Jukebox Jewelry at all?
I remember the format. I think what's his name? The host again?
The original one. It'd be before your time, but you may have seen clips. It was David Jacobs.
Yeah, I seem to
remember him being black and white, really.
I seem to remember him quite well spoken, but very dry. He didn't have a lot of energy to him.
Yeah, I think a lot of BBC presenters were like that then, though, weren't they? Like, no one really seemed to sort of start getting overly caffeinated till kind of about 1978 or something like that. But punk happened, and it was, we can sort of loosen up a little bit.
I'm doing the top button.
That's more a kind of, not criticism, but more of a comment about the BBC generally.
I think that was, they were still remanating from the original days of television, where everything had to be prim and proper, and you had to have a set dialect or accent, shall we say.
Yeah, you had to have that received pronunciation.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, someone like me
could have got a job with the BBC 60 years ago then with this kind of voice.
No.
Charming.
No. But it was all I remember is I think they had three panelists, and they'd play a record, and they'd go, play the bit if there was a video, such as it was, live performance, whatever. And then everyone would comment and say, "Oh yes, I like this," or "No, I don't like that. Here's why." I think they may have given it a score. I can't remember. Jukebox Jewelry on YouTube. Yeah, I'll have to give them a look.
Admittedly, I think I'd really enjoy. I might even be tempted to do some reactions. Actually,
I've got a funny feeling on the revival when we said when it was I don't know when it was, the second one anyway. And I've got a funny feeling I remember seeing a video of Johnny Rotten on there.
I was just thinking about that. That would have been the 79 reboot with Noel Edmonds. I've vividly, and this will only be like clip. I think it's one of those moments that's shown like on the sort of 100 most notorious TV moments.
Yeah, but I got a funny feeling he wasn't that bad considering his reputation. he was actually reasonably well behaved.
Or am I getting mixed up with him off? Never mind the Buzzcocks years after. I know he sat there and he kind of, you know, like the way you looked at Noel Edmonds was kind of like the way I look at Noel Edmonds with complete.
Well, he might still have done that. He might still have done that, but I think
I don't know. I'm perhaps if anyone can remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Referring to John Lydon, as he would have been by then, was definitely on an episode of the Noel Edmonds era Jukebox Jewelry, and I know it's a clip, and I can't quite remember. Remember the reasons why, but it's a clip that's gone down in notoriety, really.
Perhaps
probably not as much as the Sex Pistols on the Today Show a few years earlier, but
maybe that's what I'm comparing. Maybe that's what I'm comparing it to. That's why
I've seen that clip. I know that's not a music show; it was just like a regional ITV1 show kind of prototype. But I've seen that clip so many times, I feel like I can almost recite it.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of 79s. Oh, excellent. You know what? Because I'm running out of chart shows to react to now, full chart shows, I think I'm going to have to start digging out some jukebox jewelries for the channel.
I would, yeah. I mean, I was going to do it a while back, but I never felt quite comfortable doing it. Find the right vibe for it.
I mean, there's probably going to be more talking, really, than actual music.
Well, this is it, yeah.
So I'm perhaps going to have to learn a different way of reacting, sort of like, you know, me just sort of shutting up a bit more. But I just want to have a look at Mark Gilroy, Gillimonster's comment here. A good bit on Jukebox Joy when they slagged off Glenn Medeiros, then he walks in. Was that Jukebox Joy, or was it a similar thing that, like your Going Lives or your Saturday Superstores did?
I've got a funny feeling I remember that, but I can't think what it was on.
I think I actually saw that when it first happened. You know that.
I know. With anything of those Saturday morning shows, they had a few dodgy things, shall we say, happen with viewer phone calls and asking questions perhaps they wouldn't have. Shouldn't have asked.
Well. Yeah, Going Live, certainly. They had, I don't think they called it Jukebox Jewelry, and they might have called it
there was a section.
A bit plain, like Video Vote or something like that.
I'll tell you how I remember it, because bloody Maggie Thatcher was on there.
Yeah. I was about to say it might have been Saturday Superstore, but it could have been Going Live. It could have been both. She might have been on twice.
Yeah, it's one of those Saturday morning kids TV multi-programs, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So, I think Jukebox Jewelry, there again, I can't really say too much about it apart from, seeing certain clips, but it's something I think really I'm going to have to do some downloading and some full episodes if I can find any.
It'll certainly be interesting to watch, mate.
Yeah. Even if I just do one as like a one-off and the format doesn't work well for me, I'll still give it a try.
Do the John Lydon one.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see if there's anything. Is there any programs that started in the 70s that you think we should mention, Jason?
I don't necessarily can mention because I was only a kid, so a lot of them are very vague, should we say? I don't know about 70s. I remember things like obviously our multicolour swap shop that had musical guests on there.
Yeah, but I mean, specifically, pretty much exclusively music related. Anything?
Not really.
I've listed lots of stuff here, but the vast majority of it, I'm pretty certain. Now, there was one thing I wanted to mention. It's probably very niche, actually. Rob Walker might appreciate this, though. I wanted to just give a quick mention because the bloke who presented it, I love him. He's a hero of mine. I wanted to mention the Granada TV music show, So It Goes, that was on from 1976 to 1977, presented by Tony Wilson or Anthony H. Wilson, however he wished to be known at that point. Now then, Jason, you're unlikely to have seen it at the time because I think it was one of those things. Granada made it, and they were also the only ITV region that showed it. I never saw it. I mean, obviously, I wasn't born then, but I never. Even if I had been born, I wasn't in the Granada region. I'm in kind of a weird Central / Yorkshire region.
No, I don't think we had Granada. We had Granada programs, but the one I remember, TVS was the first one I remember, and that would have been 80s. What they had before TVS, I don't know. But no, it was. You had a lot of that with the regions. One region would show one thing.
I wanted to just very briefly mention So It Goes because you know what a big fan I am of Manchester music and you know the whole punk and post-punk culture that was coming out of Manchester at that point. Tony Wilson, who founded Factory Records, and of course he was a newsreader on Granada for many years, many years really. And just kind of like he's, you know, certainly in the north of this country, he's like a legendary figure, really. I've always found him fascinating, really. I've got books about him and things like that. I think So It Goes, I believe that was the first live television performance by the Sex Pistols.
Could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm pretty certain Joy Division were on it at least once as well. Because if I know they have been.
The one I kind of remember, I don't know whether they showed all of it. Right, I wasn't going to say too much about it. So what's that? Remember Granada?
Yeah, it's Rob. It'll be So It Goes, Rob. Because Rob's. I won't say your age, Rob, but I know you're turning a particular milestone this year if you haven't already. So
I mean, the thing is with a lot of these programs as well, they weren't on very long.
No.
Like you said, that was only on for a year or two, the 1 or 2 seasons.
Yeah, 76, 77, and it may have got to 1 or 2 other ITV regions, but from what I can tell, it seems to be like a Granada exclusive. Well, it was produced in Manchester, made by Granada. Tony Wilson was specifically a Granada employee at the time, and it was like his way of. I think it was meant to be like his sort of response in a way to kind of like the anodyne pop of Top of the Pops, and also the kind of serious beard scratching whistle test. I think you know, So It Goes, I think, although a lot of people forget, you know, maybe not think about it when it comes to important music television. But I think as far as sort of showcasing your punk and post-punk and the early indie acts and new wave, it was Tony Wilson's idea, and I think it was one of these things he pitched it to his bosses, and they said, well, all right, we'll give you a series, but if it's rubbish, like, we're cancelling it. Well, and it was a way of him getting the music he liked and that he was promoting on TV because Top of the Pops weren't playing an awful lot of punk, apart from maybe like more gimmicky kind of, you know, punk tracks like your Chris Spedding and stuff like that. And the Andre Whistle Test was, you know, it was still quite proggy and serious. And and Wilson just wanted something that was, you know, not to be too young ones about it, but for the kids, really. But for the cool kids, not the little kids who watch Top of the Pops, is what I'm saying.
No. You saying about it, I was going to forget about it, but you saying that there seemed to be a phase of those sort of regional programs, right? Because I said to you about a show called All Right Now that was on Time Tees, right? And it had one of the singers from Darts presenting it, and he was trying to come across as a bit of a nutter and all the rest of it. He got taken off the end for being too outrageous. But that was a similar thing as well, because they had the Police, they had Lindisfarne, all sort of like the northern bands.
So
it was similar. Similar structure.
So I suppose that's kind of similar, if not in sort of music style, but in kind of that sort of, you know, he was a very big regionalist, Tony Wilson was. He was very proud of Manchester, and he wanted Manchester to make his mark on the wider world.
Yeah.
Although Richard has not reminded me, but let me know that the Jam and the Ramones are both on Whistle Test. Yeah, I think Whistle Test for a moment. I think, you know, I think it's unfair to say they just had sort of like your shoegazing sort of real ale drinking prog. I think that's a generalisation, but it's like saying Top of the Pops was like, you know, all pop music all the time. When even Top of the Pops might have something a bit weird on.
Oh, they would
Now and
yes.
again. So but fair point, Richard, about the Jam and the Ramones. I mean, the Jam, you know, I do like the Jam. They're a band I really think I ought to try and get into more. And the Ramones, not so bad, not so bad. I think we can probably move into the 1980s now. Now, there was a lot of shows that would have cropped up in the 1980s. There again, it's maybe more towards the late 80s where I'm going to start having better memories of them. But to talk about anything from the maybe early or mid 80s that maybe you can shed some light on, Jason. Someone, who was it? Someone mentioned the Oxford Road show earlier. Have you got any memories of that? Or
can't say that I do. Again, it's probably one of those things that if I saw it, I would go, "Oh yes, I do remember that." Right, and I may have seen an episode or two. Right, but it's not what it was. No,
all I do know about Oxford Roadshow is that the young ones took the piss out of it in I think the very first episode. I think that what was it, Nosing Around show, that was meant to be like a piss take of the Oxford Road show.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
maybe I didn't get that joke.
To my knowledge. Well, we can move on from that. But if anyone wants to leave any Oxford Road show, memories or comments in the chat, and
I had a whole list of TV shows I could mention, but I thought we ought to keep it, relatively concise. Stuff we actually remember.
I really only mentioned that because I know someone mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Rob Walker has mentioned the Tube, and I know you'd like to talk about the Tube.
Yeah.
The Tube. Again, a little bit before my time, but I've seen clips. Jason, the Tube. Time production. I might have the dates here for it somewhere. My notes aren't in a very good order. 1982 till 1987 was the Tube. And of course, the main host, I think they would have had a few others, but the main ones, of course, were Jules Holland and the late and lovely Paulie Yates. I think
yes, very much so.
Paulie Yates, by the way, this is a bit off topic, but there's an excellent documentary about her on Channel 4's All 4 service, and it kind of rights some of the wrongs about her for me, about the way she was treated in the media. Particularly the last few years of her life, and that's all I'll say about that. But Jules Holland, of course, he was the keyboardist in Squeeze.
That's it. Yep.
And then he went on to, arguably bigger things with his TV work, and Paulie Yates. And I remember, did Muriel Gray present it sometimes?
I think she was on it at one point. Yes. Yeah. I think that was a bit later on though.
And they made it's not a program because I never saw it at the time. It's not a program I've researched much for this, but there may have been other presenters as well. But it was a Newcastle shop thing. But interestingly, it was Time T's production, I think. But it was Channel 4, weren't it? Because back then, one of their companies were producing stuff for Channel 4, weren't they?
I think it was one of Channel 4's first programs. I wouldn't swear to it, but quite early on.
It probably. Well, yeah. What date did I say? 82. Yeah, it would have been. It would have. It perhaps would have been on the first night of broadcast or the first week, certainly.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, there's a few things I do remember from it. I remember late in the series, Jules Holland swearing. Right?
Yeah. In hindsight, these days, doesn't seem that much of a big deal. I can't remember what swear word he said.
He basically called the audience a bunch of ungroovy fuckers or something like that.
Oh, did he? Oh, yeah. Right. I thought it was quite a mild one. Like he said, I don't know, like he probably said bloody hell before 9 o'clock.
He said shit on there before, early on.
Right,
but no, that was the main one he got reprimanded for. But no, I remember the show being very sort of anarchic, quite chaotic. Cameras going about here, there, and everywhere. I think a lot of the time they went off scripts. Saying things, I don't know about voicing opinions so much, but you know, it was all done a bit sort of, let's sort of take the piss a little bit. The main people I remember is they discovered Terence Trent D'Arby on there.
Oh, he got a big break on the tube, did he?
Yeah, very much so. I don't know if he was actually signed then or not. But that's the first time I remember seeing him. That was a big thing.
Well, yeah, he certainly started charting in, I think, '87. It's funny you mention him, actually, because he's there with the House Martins for me. It's like quite an early Top of the Pops memory.
Yeah.
So,
they also had, it was the first appearance, I believe, of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Yeah, and that was what
you're right there.
Yeah, that was what got them attracted to ZTT. That's how they got them signed.
Yeah, Paul Morley and Trevor Horn, of course, founded ZTT. Or Z. What is it, Z or Z? I'm never sure.
I can tell you. Z, I think it's ZTT, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because Z makes it sound Americanized, and I get the feeling Paul Morley certainly wouldn't be keen on that. But
no. So there was that. And I've also found something which I'd forgotten. It allowed the meeting between Bob Geldof and Major, which was the catalyst for Band Aid. So they had quite a lot of things that came about because of what they were doing. It wasn't a kids show, you know. It definitely wasn't a kids show. No.
I never realised the Tube was kind of that seismic, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it did have a lot of influence. But then, you know, people said about the word. Well, that had a lot of, you know, we get to that later, obviously, but that had a lot of things happening with it. And, you know, at the time, it might not have seemed very much, but in the history of music, it was like quite monumental, you know, especially the Band Aid thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, interesting that probably, you know, had its genesis from a chance meeting, backstage at the Tube.
Well, obviously, at one point, Paulie Yates and Bob Geldof were in a relationship together.
Well, they were married for many years.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I don't know whether that became a bit
breakfast interview with a certain Mr. Michael Hutchence in the mid '90s, but but we won't go on about that. Like I say, that you do touch upon that obviously in that Paulie Yates documentary, which is really interesting. I do.
Yeah, I remember
with an interesting kind of UK '80s and '90s culture and music and stuff to watch that documentary.
Also, I certainly remember watching it, and I've seen it recently. There was a thing with a very, very young Bangles on there, with Susanna Hoff and all that. They were on there, and it was showing them. The guys went to America to interview them on, I think it may have been Long Beach or something like that. And, you know, they were doing roller skating and all the rest of it, and, you know, typical sort of American stuff. Yeah. And they all looked, you know, the whole band looked sort of kind of awkward and, you know, just getting their first sort of recognition. So that they were on there as well. I remember that.
Now, one thing, I think someone did briefly mention it earlier. If I think it was someone getting Pop Quiz mixed up with Jukebox Jury, if I've just kind of spoilt my own little bit there. But Pop Quiz or Mike Reed's Pop Quiz. I always call it Mike Reed's Pop Quiz because I had the computer game that was specifically called that.
I was going to say
that. I get the feeling, especially as it's here on my notes, that it was just mainly called Pop Quiz rather than Mike Reed's.
Who knows?
They had to put Mike Reed's name in the computer game or something like that.
That was something to do with the license.
Yeah. Any sort of thoughts about that? I mean, I suppose the most comparable thing really would be Jukebox Jury, but in a way, no. Maybe you can compare it to something like Nevermind the Buzzcocks, which was obviously a lot later on.
It was more like that, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Because it was just basically a bunch of celebrities, as far as I can remember. I don't think it was members of the public. It was just.
I can't remember if it were public or celebrities.
Yeah, I think it was celebrities. So I remember anyway. I could be wrong. But yeah, just going over sort of like a bit that had happened, sort of that week with the charts, but also like obviously stuff from the past. It reminded me a little bit of. Do you remember Screen Test, the kids' TV movie quiz?
Yeah, I've seen bits. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Anyway, it was that sort of format.
Mm.
So watch this video. What happens next, or all that sort of side of thing. Yeah, very, very, very much like a precursor to Never Mind the Buzzcocks.
Mm.
Yeah, it was all right. It was entertaining. I don't remember anything sort of standout moment of it, but it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It's a panel show, a quiz show. Yeah. Probably. Maybe not as anarchic and as comedy centric as one you get these days are. Robert Plant was a big guest name on Pop Quiz apparently. Wow, that's
yes, I seem to remember seeing that actually.
Yeah,
he did. If I remember right, he was pretty knowledgeable.
So we can move a bit further along in the 80s. Now then, 1986, important year as far as me watching, not necessarily from the start, but certainly when it switched channels a few years later. But 1986 on Channel 4 saw the start of the chart show, which I think was Channel 4's initially, because it's basically all music videos. There's no live studio performances. It's like they're kind of, here's like half an hour or an hour of MTV style programming for those of you, which would have been most of us in the country, who didn't have access to MTV.
No, then, exactly.
My chart show era was certainly at least from 1989 onwards, when 89 is when it went to Saturday mornings on ITV. I think it was like a late night Channel 4 thing before that. But it seemed to retain, with a few maybe cosmetic tweaks, it seemed to retain the same sort of format that it started out with on Channel 4.
Yeah,
I was a big chart show fan when I was in my pre-teens. I think after a while, from probably about 91, 92, I think I was more of a religious chart show viewer than Top of the Pops one. I think
agreed.
Pops, I could easily skip that a few weeks and not really care, especially if I was listening to the Radio 1 Top 40 most weeks anyway. I do like the chart show, and I love the specialist charts. I always got excited. It's like, which specialist chart is it going to be this week?
Yeah,
what's your favourite specialist chart, Jason? Indie singles, dance chart, or rock chart? Go on, pick one.
If I have to pick one.
Yeah, just your favourite. You could like all three. I love all three.
I suppose because of the music I'm into, the rock one.
Yeah.
But a hell of a lot of bands I like were on the indie charts.
Yeah. The indie chart often used to make me laugh because a lot of the bands who'd be in the indie top 10, they wouldn't have a video, so they just have to have like a photograph up, and then you hear like 5-10 seconds of their track, and then probably some EP or something that maybe John Pillow was playing, but probably didn't even reach the top 75 in the normal singles chart.
What I loved about it was the fact that because they had these specialist charts, you were hearing bands that you would have never heard on Top of the Pops.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? Bands that weren't even in the charts, right? I think Oasis were on there when they first started. Suede, certainly, because I remember listening to Metal Mickey on there. Probably Blur.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. I know Suede would definitely on there.
And just it was. I think for many of us, it was like the first place, like the first programming block of any regularity, where you could sit for an hour or whatever and see all these promo videos. I mean, what
exactly?
Where else? Because Top of the Pops, they did show the odd music video, and like they make a big deal if they had like the UK premiere of Michael Jackson's Black and White and things like that. But generally, like they were all about the studio performances, whereas the chart,
yes,
you got to see these promo videos, and like I say, I just loved it when like it was the turn of the indie chart, and then half the people in the indie top 10 never bothered filming a video. So they said
that was it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I always got a kick out of that. I don't know what.
Yeah, there is one thing though you're saying about them not having a video. I don't know if it's the indie charts necessarily, but I seem to remember that there was the odd recorded performance. Now, not live like Top of the Pops were doing, but a recorded performance that they were somewhere and they just recorded it to help promote the single. I seem to remember something like that, but I
Possibly.
can't.
I know.
Might have been the Charlatans.
I can think of one example akin to that, actually, Jace. It would have been 1989. It was when Black Box got to #1 with Ride on Time.
Yeah.
They'd never bothered recording a music video for it at that point. So what the chart show started doing, they started using footage from, it would have been an ITV Kids Saturday morning show. It might have been Get Fresh.
Ah, right. Maybe that was it, yeah.
It was like an outdoor performance. And they used that for the next 5-6 weeks. I mean, the chart show's charts.
You could be right.
I've talked about this on my channel a little bit. They were quite different from the official BBC Gallup charts.
That was the one with Gaz Top in it, wasn't it? Get Fresh.
Yeah, I think
Adrian Mole.
It might have been Get Fresh. It might have been Motormouth, possibly. It was one of those in from the late 80s.
For that era, yeah.
You'd be able to find out.
Yeah. God, Motormouth, blimey. I'd forgotten about that show.
It was named after you, weren't it, Jason?
Yeah. Well.
But the chart show, for 1989 till I think probably 1993, 94, that was essential viewing for me. I think if I had to go out on a Saturday morning into town or whatever, I think I'd make sure that was recorded.
Yeah, video it. Yeah, no doubt.
Record the late night repeat on a Sunday night or whatever it was, so that I could watch it on Monday or whatever. And at some point, I can't quite pinpoint the year. They mucked up the format a little bit too much. Yeah, it still had the specialist charts, but it just didn't look the same.
No.
I don't know. It might have been around when sort of Twix started sponsoring it or something like that.
There was that, yes, they did do that, didn't they?
I love the computer graphics and the
well, maybe that was the thing. They thought we were a bit outdated by then.
He probably did look out of date in the mid-90s, but I think most people loved all that.
I did. Well, it did. The special titles for the specialist charts as well and everything.
Yeah.
And the thing where they did I think it was for the top 10 where they had the old fairground hammer thingy.
Yeah, the popping balloons.
Chart breakers or whatever it was.
Yeah, the popping balloons and things like that.
Yeah.
And the big wheel. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, and then it just started having these rather not even that fancy really, just different, just boring normal text graphics, and the information seemed to start getting more inane on them as well. The magic was over at that point. Really.
I got a funny feeling they started doing interviews on there as well.
Yes, because I've reacted to a couple where.
Yes, you did, didn't you? Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what put people off as they started doing the interviews. They tried to change the format up, and they didn't. It's not broken. So don't try and fix it.
Well,
leave it alone.
Exactly. I mean, it was a format that looked, maybe it looked of its, before, maybe a bit before its time by that time, if you see what I mean. But it was unique, and it was how the show was meant to look.
That's why for years I was pissed off at Ant and Dec.
Well, yeah. I mean,
CD UK came along.
I don't know if we'll particularly get onto them or CD UK. You never know. I mean, by my reckoning, we're probably about another 50 minutes to talk about some stuff. So,
yes, mate. Yeah, which was Craig was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, the Top of the Pops exclusive. Yeah, so some of those were all right. What did I see on BBC 4 recently? It was some grunge type band, I think it was.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying there, Richard. Chart show finished in '98. I mean, we had Chart Show TV, which was one of those digital music TV channels.
Never got to see that.
It was pretty samey to all the other ones that were cropping up at the same time. You didn't miss anything, is what I'm saying.
That's right, fair enough. Okay.
I don't even think they really paid much homage to the old chart show look on it, really, which was a shame.
That's what I would have liked to see.
Yeah. But we go further into the late 80s for a series that only lasted for pretty much like one calendar year. Another Time Tease production, but this one for ITV rather than for Channel 4. I've reacted to a couple of these. In fact, specifically, I've reacted to the very first episode and the very last one.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Jace?
I think so.
Go on, then.
The Roxy?
Yeah, the Roxy, yeah.
Yep.
So the Roxy, now, that was a Kid Jensen thing. He was one of the original presenters on there.
Yeah.
And weirdly, and I never realised this until many years later. Thank you, Rob. Cheers, mate. Thank you for coming in. I never realised until years later that one of the early hosts, one of Kid Jensen's co-hosts, was a young Irish chap. His name's escaped me now. And he ended up briefly appearing in an episode of Father Ted some years later.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It was. Oh, what was his name?
Look him up if you want.
Yeah, it just he's been like in more recent years he's been like quite a prominent artist in Ireland, and
it wasn't the one that played the depressing priest, was he? The one that didn't say anything.
It's not him, but I think that was the episode that he appeared in briefly.
Yeah, I mean they had quite a lot of well-known people on there.
A black fella.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
Well, yeah. Don't worry about it. But
okay, right.
So the Roxy obviously was ITV saying, "Oh, Top of the Pops," because I mean, Top of the Pops was still, 1987 to 88 was still pretty much essential viewing for many music fans. It was, it had arguably certainly not reached its peak, certainly in that era anyway, and. The ITV, of course, they not ITV as an independent television, but there was two rival charts certainly back then, weren't there? There was the network charts called the official Gallup / BBC chart that Radio 1 and Top of the Pops use, and then there was that network chart.
Yeah, I think it was for the independent radio
use.
Yeah, independent record stores as well.
I don't know if it had much to do with independent record stores. The main difference regarding the official chart and the network chart I always was familiar with was the network chart was also based on independent radio airplay. It wasn't just sales. It was also radio.
Right. Maybe I've got the two mixed up.
Thinking of.
Yeah.
Plus, if you have independent record stores, then I don't know. It's a bit of a minefield, all that.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the Roxy lasted a year. I think from what I've seen of sort of more contemporary comments, I think a lot of people have quite fond memories of it, really, even though it didn't last very long. But I don't know. I remember even thinking at the time, because I remember watching a few of them when I was 7, 8 years old, thinking, it's not as good as Top of the Pops, this. It's just It's just not pitching a tent for me, really.
Yeah, I remember I don't know. I think the stage setup was better, right, than Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
Whether they ever got to perform live or not, I don't know. I really can't remember. But I'm not sure the production quality was quite the same.
No.
I'm not sure.
No.
It's one of those ones, I think I watched a few episodes, but I didn't watch many.
No, same. I watched it now and again, maybe when I was bored or nothing else or on the other side kind of thing, and it was like, well, it kills half an hour, but it's just for me it was like I think I resented it a little bit because it was like, well, what are ITV trying to steal Top of the Pops thunder?
They were. That's what they were trying to do.
I mean, I was right, but Yeah, and I don't know. As a young child, that kind of annoyed me a bit. It was like, well, why are they doing that? I mean, I get it now, obviously, in many years later. But so it's I've not an awful lot to, even though I've got quite vivid memories, and then like I say, I've even done a couple of Roxy reactions on the channel. I did those quite some years ago, actually. Now, I've got no real fondness for it, or the way it looked, or I know they had some good acts on, because I remember they had Erasure on. I think Alison Moyet cropped up. And there was a lot of good music in the charts in '87 and '88, so they were bound to have some decent.
They did have some good stuff on there. I won't go into detail, but the one I remember there was a big controversy about it was Vanessa Paradis' performance, and I will leave it there.
No, you can carry on, because I'm not sure what you're referring to here.
Well, basically, underage, only 14.
That's a point.
Right? Do you remember now?
Yeah, because you're only like 14 or something.
She's only about 14, and it was a whole performance of what she was wearing.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to say any more than that, because I don't want to get into trouble.
Fair enough. Yeah, as soon as you said, because you were under, I was like, yeah, Joe the Taxi. She was quite, it. It's an interesting one. I mean, I might I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here again. Joe the Taxi is an interesting thing. I think that really kind of, certainly at that point, maybe things are a bit different over there now. But if you think about French culture, I mean, they didn't really seem to give a shit, really. But
no, they didn't. They didn't.
If a 14-year-old lass wants to have a pop career and do it in kind of like a slightly sort of sexual sort of way, it's like in France it was just like, oh yeah, all right then, that's no one really kind of thought it was a little bit iffy, did they? And looking back, obviously it kind of was. But
well, I mean at the time, what year was that?
Well, Joe the Taxi it was probably around early to mid '88, I think, weren't it?
Well, I was going to say mid '80s, because obviously a teenage lad and the old hormones going.
Well, it was '88, I'm pretty sure. So you would have been. You were in 17, almost 18, Jace.
Was I?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I thought I was younger. Okay, right. Oops, I should say nothing more then.
Just realise these shows are saved, and the police can access them.
Sorry.
But yeah, the Roxy. I get it, but I don't know. I've still got a little bit of resentment. Weirdly, I don't even at this point. It's like, James, get over it, kind of thing. But I don't know why did they need to try? Is what I'm wondering. Like
ratings, money.
Yeah. It just felt like a kind of
it was
in the bag, but sort of a shot from across the bows. Really,
it wasn't doing it because they thought it would make a good program. It was like, we want the BBC's ratings. I think it was a bit ill-conceived, to be honest.
I don't know if the Newcastle and Tyne-Tees connection, whether because interestingly, it would have started. Maybe I'm assuming it probably used the same studio sets, probably. Because I'm assuming the Roxy would have started around the time the Tube finished, so. Was there like a bit of continuity there? Maybe it was Tyne-Tees saying, "Well, we're not working with Channel 4 anymore. Why don't we just do something?"
You're saying that. I've got a funny feeling I read somewhere that the people behind the Tube were behind the Roxy.
Well, it was definitely the same ITV region. That's all.
I got a funny. There was more than that with the connection.
They were both from Newcastle. I know that, but there's probably some link and some continuity there.
One of the producers or something.
Yeah, Yeah, there would have been some crossover with live production stuff. You would have thought, wouldn't you? But
yeah.
You know, who can say for certain without looking into it? I think the only other 80s show that I really want to maybe touch upon briefly is one I actually forgot it started that early. It was 1989, I think. I've got it in my notes somewhere, and yeah, there we are. It ran from 1989 to 2000. I think it actually, from what I was reading, it started out as kind of like a 10-minute segment on children's BBC in the late 80s, and then into the 90s, it grew to be like its own, 25, 30-minute weekly show. I'm talking about the Ozone.
Yes.
Did you watch it?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was more initially, it was sort of like just a general music information show to begin with. I think it was Andy Crane initially.
Yeah, because he did a lot of the CBBC broom cupboard stuff at that point.
That's it, yeah. And he was sort of like, you know, a big thing behind that. Yeah, no, I couldn't tell you who was on it, but I do remember it, and you know, them sort of going about I think they said about new releases and stuff like that. You know, only the ones, obviously, that they were getting paid for to promote, shall we say.
Well, I remember when it became more of its own thing and a standalone show. I remember associating Jamie Theakston and Jane Middlemiss with it.
That was, yes.
I mean, both of those
would,
of course, go on to be semi-regular Top of the Pops hosts more towards the late 90s and early noughties, didn't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, those two, I really associate those two with the Ozone. Thank you, Richard. Cheers, mate. I appreciate you coming in.
Where's the office?
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I've not really got an awful lot to say about the Ozone, other than that I remember it, and it was something I think it used to be, like the sort of standalone ones certainly were on like around a Sunday lunchtime.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was slotted in between, because I think there was something that I was watching, and then beforehand or after, I can't remember which it was.
Yeah, I think it might have been the same for me as well.
And you sort of like, it filled 10 minutes or whatever it happened to be.
Well, the early ones, very early ones that you're saying at 10, they were definitely they weren't even classed as proper shows at that point. It was sort of, you know, bits, 5-10 minute bits in between Andy Crane linking to Grange Hill or whatever. So,
I can't remember what it was I was watching. Yeah,
but when it became like a BBC Two Sunday lunchtime thing, and it was more, I remember there being quite a few interviews on that I was never overly keen on, but you know, it was a music show, so I thought it was worth a passing mention, but nothing. You know, I've not got any sort of massive fondness for it, other than to say I remember it. And it was, you know, sometimes it was all right. It was watchable, but I've not got any great fondness for it, like I have certain eras of Top of the Pops, and of course,
I've got a funny feeling it became a bit sort of teeny bop centered, you know. So you know, the boy band and the girl bands, all that kind of thing.
So we can move into the 1990s now, which I think. Will be a nice thing to do. Now, I've not got any notes for the 1990s because I've made such a muck up of printing out all these ones for the 70s and 80s. Gave up on the job. So I'm gonna have to, you know, I can't really, you know, unless something really jumps out in my mind, I can't really speak to like air dates and things like that.
No, I wouldn't be able to tell you for definite.
We can certainly talk about some of our music TV memories from the 90s.
My scripts,
because I've not got anything in written notes or printed notes.
Well, my notes have completely gone out the window. So,
Jason, what 90s music show would you like to mention?
Well,
first?
obviously, the one that a lot of people remember is, and I think that was 90s, wasn't it? It was The Word.
Yeah, that started not in the 90s. It would have been. I'm trying. I've got a feeling it would have been around 91 or 92.
I was going to say quite early on. Yeah. I mean, you had the divvy that was what's his face? Terry Christian, yeah. Terry Christian, yeah. Complete and utter pillock, right? But all the people that were involved sort of made it what it was. Again, it was another one of these sort of like semi-chaotic shows. Anything could happen. Anything did happen. You know, it was a bit of fun. Some really good bands on there. I think not the one that I was looking for, but one of the early performance by Rage Against the Machine. I got a funny feeling Nirvana were on there.
I think they were, yeah. The Nirvana performance in the UK that always stands out to me is that weird one on Top of the Pops.
Yeah, where he's
you know, it's what I'm on about. The one,
he's missing
anyone
about.
in the chat or anyone watching on replay was like, what's he on
I saw
about?
that the other day, actually.
Look up Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit on Top of the Pops. Yeah,
yeah.
I was never much of a Nirvana fan. Even now,
but
I can take or leave them, but I have to admire someone like I have to admire Kurt Cobain's Bottle for just totally taking the piss out of everything like he did that day.
Yeah, definitely.
But Nirvana. Yeah, I get the feeling they were on the word. Certainly, Oasis got their. I think that was their first televised performance on the word, I believe.
I've got a funny feeling the Verve were on there as well.
Very, very possibly, yeah.
Ocean Colour Scene.
Oh yeah, I bet they would have had a lot of the Britpop acts.
Yeah, all that sort of thing. There was the dodgy segment with L7.
Yeah.
You know what I'm on about.
Yeah.
That really got taken off.
It's actually on YouTube, and it's not been taken down for reasons. But L7, the tube, look that up.
Yeah. The word. You mean
the word? Sorry. Yeah.
The
word. Yeah. There are a lot of programs beginning with the from Channel 4, weren't there? Another one you're going to want to mention.
So that was sort of the main thing. You know, we had Mark Lamar on there.
Mark Lamar, of course, yeah.
Danny Bear.
She was.
Who was
Danny Bear. Yeah, Danny Bear, Katie Puckrick.
Yeah, I was going to say her. Yeah.
One, because it's there again, like the John Lydon jukebox jury thing. It's like one of those clips that ends up in these retrospective clip shows. But one word moment that stands out for me is the one where Mark Lamar's interviewing Shabba Ranks. Do you remember?
Vaguely.
And basically, and for fair play to Mark Lamar, full credit to him. He just challenges Shabba Ranks about all his homophobic lyrics.
Yes, no, I do.
And then Shabba Ranks is saying, "Oh, it's how I was brought up. It's my religion." And Mark Lamar's just there saying to him, "Oh, you're talking bollocks." Basically, you shouldn't. You've got an influence. You're an influence to millions of impressionable young fans worldwide, and you've just been very very prejudiced.
Yeah,
it was an interesting moment. That it was.
Yes, I vaguely remember that.
It was just nice to see, because like too many interview shows, you get like the interview with the celebrity, and basically the interview is doing like half an hour arse licking, really, aren't they? Please promote your latest film, or whatever.
Didn't I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but someone else called out Bobby Brown for something similar.
I can't remember. Very, very possibly. I don't know if that was on a show or something, or in a magazine. I don't know, but I can believe it. Yeah. But what Mark Lamar really taking Shabba Ranks to task.
He was very confrontational, Mark Lamar.
Yeah, I liked him. He retired from the public eye quite some years ago. I follow him on Twitter, and all he does, he just posts YouTube links to all his favourite songs and talks about them. And every time someone tweets him and says, "Oh, why haven't you been on television for years or radio for years?" he just says, "No, retired. Don't want to do it anymore."
Yeah. 50s throwback.
He always seemed a little bit ill at ease with certain parts of, I know he did The Big Breakfast, and he also was on Shooting Stars for a few years. But
he was good on that.
And then, of course, he did Nevermind the Buzzcocks, which I suppose we ought to find time to mention a little bit later on. But yeah, Mark Lamar, he's happily retired, and he just likes playing all sorts of music and sharing it on Twitter. That's what he does seemingly every day.
Fair enough. He's happy doing that. Then let him get on with it.
Yeah. So, other 1990s stuff. I know. I get the feeling you wanted to at least mention in brief the White Room, because that's something.
Yes.
Oh, it sounds like you're a bit of a fan.
Yes, I was. I loved the show.
Was it Mark Radcliffe who presented?
Mark Radcliffe and Lard.
Oh, Lard was on it as well, was he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
I never really got into it. Weirdly,
I don't know if he was on it as Mark Radcliffe, but I'm sure he was on some of it. Anyway, there's two things I remember. It was a great show because it was all done, as far as I know, all done live. Yeah. They'd have a bit of an interview segment as well, talking to the artists, right? And they'd have some impromptu stuff. Now, the first one I remember watching, I think, and I've got to get the right around. I think the first one I saw was you had Damon Albarn, or Albarn, or however you pronounce his name, from Blur. And he did an acoustic performance with Ray Davies of the Kinks, and they did Waterloo Sunset.
Yeah, that's ringing a vague bell for me.
Yeah, they did that. And of course, where I discovered my favourite band on the planet.
Skunk Anansie.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was where you first saw them, on the White Room, was it?
Yeah, I believe that's the first time I saw them.
I've seen them on Top of the Pops a good few times, so I just assumed that was probably where you saw them first. But
okay. The only one I know that they did on Top of the Pops early on was they did Army of Me with Bjork, and I can't remember if that was before or after. And I wasn't really much of a fan of Bjork at the time, so maybe I forgot about that one. I don't know. But no, what it was, I was, it wasn't something I necessarily watched religiously, but I did like it, right? Because of, like I said, the things like Damon Albarn and all the rest of it. And anyway, they had a trailer for it, and they said, "Oh, next week Stevie Wonder's going to be on." Now, I know you're not like a massive fan, but I do like Stevie. Especially his early stuff.
Some of his 60s and 70s stuff, I do quite like it. I just didn't like I Just Called to Say I Love You. I thought that was
a bit Bon Tempi organy, wasn't it?
No. But I think he was bad across the board, not at all.
No. It was without some.
Let's give Stevie Wonder credit where it's due.
I was going to say,
not of his blindness, but I think he had his first big worldwide hit single, or certainly a hit in the UK and the US, when he was like 13 years old.
Something ridiculous like that, yeah.
He was having hits in the early 60s, and he was just a teenager. He was only born in, I think, 1950, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
You always think, because he was like a 60s artist, you always think he's going to be like sort of, kind of like the age of like the Beatles or even earlier a little bit. And he's not. He's like 10 years younger than them.
Exactly. Anyway, he was on. So I thought, Stevie Wonder live. Not something you see on TV very often. Let's watch it. And then they said, and also on the show will be Skunk Anansie. And I thought, Skunk Anansie, who the bloody hell is that? That's a weird name for a band. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I tuned in for Stevie, and I've got a funny feeling Skunk were on first. Right? Beforehand. I'd imagine they would be, And I was just blown away. Because there was this skinny little, black girl, right? For all intents and purposes, singing her lungs out at the top of her voice, doing quite thought-provoking lyrics, and the sound that came over her, you didn't expect that sound to come out of her.
No,
and I was just blown away by it, and it was like, wow, when are they coming out? And I wanted to go to see them live. They were playing Joiners in Southampton a few weeks after, and I wish I'd been into them beforehand because I would have gone. But I phoned up and they said, no, tickets are all sold out, mate.
Better late than never.
Yeah.
So we've got the White Room to thank for your not lifelong, but many decades long love of Skunk and Anzi. Well, that's a nice anecdote relating to the White Room, because I've not really got an awful lot to say about it. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the White Room, just the way it was maybe promoted and advertised more than anything, it always felt to me like kind of like Channel 4's attempt to do kind of like maybe more of a whistle test kind of thing, but in a lighter vein, like with contemporary acts who did get in the chart, like your Britpop.
I think it was more.
Whereas Whistle Test, they showed a lot of album acts and back in the 70s, and
I think it was because they were very much about live performances, as I say. I said I think they did interviews, but I can't really remember. But I think it was just groups that perhaps weren't getting the attention, or maybe with Stevie, because he went through a bit of a lull period. They was trying to redo his career, which I think helped, right?
Yeah. But it's kind of like a relatively serious show, but not kind of in a po-faced sort of.
No, well, Mark Radcliffe was always a bit tongue in cheek, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Only had to listen to his radio show to know what he was like.
Yeah, exactly.
But they had good, solid, bands on, proper bands. Or if it was Mona White, they had a band with them.
For a time in the late 90s, I can't remember what they called it now. I think Arcade A was the second album of theirs. The Shy Horse.
Radiohead.
Yeah, that was obviously who they were parodying, but they had a.
Yes, that was right. Yes. What the hell were they called? Yeah,
they called themselves the Shire Horses.
The Shire Horses, yes.
I'm trying to remember what their first album was. I'm sure I had it.
I can't remember, right?
Because they even did a parody of Monaco, Monaco.
Because I love the thing was I was intrigued by it because I liked the Seahorses tune.
Yeah, they kind of came and went a bit brief.
They did, but
as much as I loved a lot of Britpop back then, certain acts did nothing for me, and I think the Seahorses, even though one of them was obviously John Squires, who was in the Stone Roses, and I loved the Stone Roses when they were initially going, but they just didn't really do anything for me. But
then I only liked the one song, so
I think there were only the one song that really ever did anything.
Blinded by the Sun.
No, I thought it was a different one, but I can kind of hear it in my head. But anyway, never mind.
There probably is another one, but
the White Room. Well, yeah. So interesting stuff there.
Yeah,
in the White Room.
It was a good show. Well worth watching.
Yeah. What other 1990s music shows can we there's one that I know we were holding up on for a little bit. I just wondered if there's anything else that we can fit in before that. Really, it
was more of an interview show. There was the Joe Wiley show.
Was that a TV thing?
Yeah, it was late night. I don't think it was on for very long. I think it was only on for a season or two. She usually had 3 guests talking about music. There's one I want to watch actually. And they were just talking about music. Then they'd have an act on at the same time. I think Skin was on there. That's one. But I can't find the clip. Can't find the clip at all. But there's one they had Jarvis Cocker, Keith Flynn, and crikey, I can't remember now. Another sort of like artist you wouldn't have thought would sit in with those because they're all very different styles of people. There was another one where you had Sophie Ellis-Bextor, Shirley Manson from Garbage, and I think it was Goldie all talking.
All right.
So that was another one. And it was very much like them talking about their music.
Yeah, so it was more chat than actual music.
Yeah, but obviously it was all music artists.
Craig Craig Bell's just reminding me about Later with Jules Holland,
Yes.
which is it's still going now, isn't it? God, this show's
I
have
believe so, yeah.
I mean, I know he does his annual Hootenanny and things like that.
Yeah,
but,
no, as far as I know, it's still on.
So yeah, that's been quite a long running thing. I suppose in a way, that's almost kind of like the successor to Whistle Test, isn't
yes,
it? Really?
Well, that's what I said.
If only because it's BBC Two, you know.
Yeah,
and it's always full live performances, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, there's some very good bands on there.
Yeah, I've on like bootleg DVDs and stuff. I've got clips off Later with Jules Holland of New Order and things like that. So, not something that I ever thought was appointment viewing, unless there was a specifically favourite act of mine.
I would agree with that.
Like I could dip into it very occasionally, but I didn't want to watch it every week by any stretch.
No.
Jules Holland, I don't know. I think I went through a period where I just didn't like him at all, and now I can kind of tolerate him more now. But but
he's sort of an elder statesman now, isn't he?
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. Later with Jules Holland. I've not got an awful lot to really say about that.
I remember Portishead being on there for the first time.
On Later.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Portishead was one of I think it was their first performance, and it was one of those groups. When I first heard it the first time, I was like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
And then you listen to it again, and you notice little things about it. And Dummy is a great album. I don't know about their other stuff, but Dummy's a great album.
That was the one. That was the one. I just have to mention it where there was a Facebook ad that came up, and the reissue of that on vinyl.
30th anniversary,
something like that. But it came up on a Facebook ad at Sister Ray's website, and it was something like $3.99 brand new. So I went to the site and ordered it immediately, and then of course about 20 minutes later, I got an email from Sister Ray being all apologetic, like, "Oh, we're so sorry, we listed that at the wrong price. If you would like to purchase it at the full price, which was 25 quid,
all right, fair enough,
then please do so, but please accept our apologies. We haven't charged you."
Yeah.
You know,
if it had been $3.99, I would have grabbed that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have said I was ever a massive Portishead fan. I remember getting into him a little bit, kind of like might be my last year at secondary school.
Yeah,
really.
Well, it was all the trip hop thing, wasn't it?
Well, I just thought I'd share that, as you mentioned.
That's good.
Yeah, maybe I'll pick that album up one day. I doubt I'll ever find it as cheap as that on vinyl, but I might still pick it up just to say that I've got it, because I'm sure I'd enjoy it. Really,
I think they may have the sort of things they'd have. I honestly can't remember, but I think they had Beck on there.
I mean, Later would have had it would have had all kinds, really, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
there was some African language band on. I can't remember. It wasn't Lady Black Smith Bamba. It was however you pronounce it.
Pronounce that again, Jace.
Lady Blacksmith Bamba. I don't know.
In that a burger from Brazil. It's Lady Smith Black Mambazo.
Thank you.
Don't ask me how I know that so well.
No. But anyway, it wasn't them. It was some other African singer band. And I wish I knew what it was, because I remember liking the song a lot.
He was a big African artist in the 90s, certainly, weren't he? Well, it weren't him, was it?
Who was it?
Youssou N'Dour, perhaps. You know, the guy who duetted with Nena Cherry.
No, he was good though. No, it wasn't. It wasn't him.
Africa has got such a rich, variety.
This is almost
no point trying to sort of guess, really, because
it was very, very sort of like African, an African traditional music.
No, I think they did show a lot of world music on Later, didn't they? I've seen clips. Like I said, I've got DVDs for with New Order clips from all kinds of shows and performances. Top of the Pops, Later, like obscure regional things from TV in the 80s. I know Later, Pet Shop Boys, they've been on there. Yeah, I mean, anyone's really been on it, but even it to me it just doesn't. It's never felt like full on essential viewing for me though.
Yeah, in recent years I probably haven't watched it as much, but there were there were a lot of good bands on there.
Yeah,
There were.
well,
As off the top of my head,
well,
so much.
I don't know if we're saving the best till last here. Probably, I don't think it is the best, but as it's probably the newest music show that that we're going to be talking about tonight. It's probably quite appropriate that we've saved it till the end, but we have to talk a little bit about Nevermind the Buzzcocks, don't we?
Oh, right, wasn't the one I thought you were going to mention.
Oh, sorry, was there something else that go on?
Well, semi-music was TFI Friday.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll talk a little bit about Buzzcocks, and then we'll finish off the TFI then, shall we?
Okay.
Sorry, I complete. That's what if I'd got me notes, then
that's fine. That's fine.
Thought that anyway.
Your show, mate. Your show.
I'm just a guest. Like I said, I had so much hassle printing out all that stuff, and I just gave up after the 80s. So yeah, Nevermind the Buzzcocks. Original host, of course, was Mark Lamar.
It was.
I can't remember exactly what year. I want to say Buzzcocks maybe started in '97. I think it started when Lamar was still doing Shooting Stars. I think.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
And then Shooting Stars probably finished for a few years, a year or two after, and then he did Nevermind. He did Buzzcocks. The probably mid-noughties or something like that. Simon Amstell, of course, became the second regular host. I know it's been revived recently on Sky One, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I've not bothered checking it. I mean, I'd have to pay extra to access it anyway, and I'm not interested enough. I think Greg Davis hosts it now, and I do quite like Greg Davis, but I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't pay to watch it just for him.
Yeah, no.
Well, I'm thinking more classic Buzzcocks, late 90s into the noughties. It was a comedy. It was a comedy panel show, but obviously it was, and you never heard loads and loads of music on it because it was all about the banter and. Yeah, I think it's certainly worth bringing up as a music related. show.
I did like it. I did enjoy it very much.
Who were the original team captains? I think it was Phil Jupitus and Sean Hughes, I think, weren't it?
Yeah, Sean Hughes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know Jupitus were on it for donkey's years, weren't he? Like what? Way into the Amstel era and beyond. So, who would you say was the better? I think I probably know your answer here if I had to guess, but who was the better Buzzcocks host, Mark Lamar or Simon Amstel?
Mark.
I thought I'd never quite get into the way Simon Amstel presented, but to be fair,
he was a smarmy little shit. Sorry.
Yeah, but he was such a little piss taker, weren't he? I mean, Lamar was pretty caustic, and he could have a few good put downs, couldn't he?
Yeah. But
I'm saying something really offensive about Robbie Williams on one episode of Buzzcocks.
Yeah,
and Lamar I'm talking about, and I wish I could remember what it was because I remember it.
I'll have to look it up. I know Huey from Fun Loving Criminals losing the plot and throwing a cup across the room. That was during Amstel's time, wasn't it? Yeah, that was.
He
was
the one
because...
who seemed to like. And that guy from that crappy punk band who'd been on Big Brother, and I've forgotten his name now. He had like a daft stage name, didn't he? The guy who started smoking during recording, and then Simon Amstel.
Oh, crikey!
Yeah, do you know what? You know what? He
was the right cock.
Yeah, and rightly he got the piss absolutely ripped out of him. And then of course the best one for even though we're saying you're at least saying, and I would agree with you largely that Lamar was the better host. More of these infamous moments seem to occur during Simon Amstel's run. Yes, if you remember, the main one was Preston from the Ordinary Boys storming off.
Was
absolutely. I've rewatched that on YouTube so many times.
He went mental, didn't he? I can't remember.
Pardon?
He went a bit mental.
Preston.
He walked off the set or something.
Yeah, he walked off. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I said.
Yeah. So I was trying to remember it.
It's like when you said he went a bit mental, I was thinking, well, you're on about like after the show or something. Like you want
about maybe he did.
Because if you remember, I think he'd either just recently married her or he was going out with her. He was dating some model.
Oh, that's right. They ripped into his missus, didn't they?
Yeah, she'd written. She hadn't. Someone had ghost written some crappy biography for her.
Yeah.
And Simon Amstell, just in between rounds, just starts reading, and he's like, you see Preston, you see, almost imagine the steam coming out of his ears.
Yeah.
And he eventually just chucks his mark. Oh, I'm not having this anymore.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Donny. Oh, it was Donny. That idiot punk bloke. It was Donny Tourette. That was it. That's his name. Oh, bloody hell.
What was he from?
I can't remember the name of his band. I'm not even sure they ever had any hits, you know. He rocked up on a series of Big Brother, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I never really watched the show, so.
Well, no, but you sort of caught
8 o'clock in the morning, Joey is asleep.
Yeah.
10 o'clock in the morning, Joey's asleep.
No, Donny Tourette. Yeah. I can't remember his band were called, but I had to really think for ages then. Yeah, he was the guy who he didn't walk off. I don't think he did anyway. Like not like how Preston did.
No.
Well,
he got a bit Larry though, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he was having the piss absolutely ripped from him from start to finish.
Didn't Brian Harvey of E17 or something go on there, and he got the piss out of him as well?
I can't remember that. That may have happened. No,
one of something like one of E17 or one of the boy bands anyway.
If it was anyone from E17, I would have thought it would have probably been Brian Harvey who that would happen to. But Buzzcocks. I think Lamar. He cost more my. When I first started watching it, when it first came on. In fact, I think that is something I pretty much caught up on most weeks when it first started. Buzzcocks. I'll always prefer Lamar to Amstell, but even that, I agree with what you're saying. Amstell, he was kind of like that little runty sort of kid that you just want to you just want to give a dry slap to. But the way he'd really bring down these arsehole celebrities and musicians, and I can't fault him for that, really.
Was he the one that had a go at Lemmy?
Probably.
I thought that was a bit off because Lemmy's a legend. That was the only time I saw something like that.
I mean, I can't say yay or nay for definite. That's the thing. I can only go by my own memories and what I've seen in more recent.
I love the intros round. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Because they had Tony Wright from Terrorvision on that. Him and Phil Jupiters, and I can't remember who they were doing it. They were doing. I think it was some woman, female singer. I can't remember who now. And they were freaking her out because of what they were doing. Even though they're just trying to do a song, she was getting freaked out about it. She couldn't figure out what the song was.
yeah, that sort of thing can happen quite often, though, wouldn't it? So,
yeah. But it wasn't. Yeah. Not a music show in the strictest sense, but
no. Well, I wanted to talk a little about it.
It was entertaining.
We'll finish with another show that you reminded me we needed to talk about.
Yeah.
I would say it was mainly music related, but it did have a lot of interview and chat.
Oh, it did.
Chris Evans putting himself over and things like that. But we have to mention it's the 90s. Tier 5 Friday. And Tier 5,
well, a lot of the
thank for it's Friday, but it didn't really. It's still thank.
No, we know what it stood for. Yeah, exactly. No, but the thing was, whether you like the guy, whether you don't, I think he was instrumental in helping a lot of bands get over. There were. I mean, all my, Skunk, Television, Reef. Who else was on there that I liked? I think Ash were on there. All that sort of Brit rock.
All right, you're a Reef fan, so you can answer me. Did he do Reef more harm than good though? With the "It's Your Letters" thing?
No. Loves it. Loads of people love
like anyone who actually recognises a member of Reef. So I think the lead singer's he's got quite a distinctive look about him. I bet
not so much now.
Anyone who recognises him, I bet like at least once a week you get someone singing "It's Your Letters."
Yeah, they did. But right, that song was very popular anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Place Your Hands was
it's reducing it to like a parody though, isn't it?
Yeah, but they did it voluntarily. They asked them if they do it. They said, "Yeah, no problem."
Yeah, but I suppose maybe they did expect it to get quite ubiquitous. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Reef themselves are fine with it all these years later, then obviously I'm fine with it. I just always wondered, might that be something that grates after a while? But
I don't think they. But then you see, you saying that, right? I think I've told you. Well, the first time I heard Reef was when was it Naked, their first single, and they were on the mini disc commercial.
Yes.
And they're actually in the commercial. Yeah. So you could have said that was, a thing that would stick with them. No, I mean Reef was still going. They're still selling records. Not the same lineup, admittedly, but because I met them about a year or so ago.
Well, TFI. It was initially live, and then there was that infamous Shaun Ryder appearance where
F.
Yeah. The one, if you look back at that, that's another one. That's a clip that gets replayed on television still. Even
it's the look on Chris Evans' face, though. I mean, he was laughing about it.
Yeah,
but it's not. I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, but have a look at the clip again, like later on, and like notice something that a lot of people ignore about that. Like everyone always focuses on when Shaun Ryder and he's got like his hair dyed, Anthony. He's trying to look a bit like John Lydon.
Yeah,
and he goes on and he starts going fuck, blah 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 blah. But if you notice, like when he's walking through the crowd, he gives some female fan a right whack on the head as he walks past.
Does he?
Yeah. Watch out for it.
I've not seen. No, the clip I've seen doesn't show that.
People never mention it. He just walks and he just blooming clouts someone for no reason. Yeah. No,
I didn't know that. No. Yeah, maybe it was somebody he knew. He was having a laugh. I don't know.
It just looked like some random sort of 20-year-old fan just enjoying the show like everyone else. Yeah. And for some reason, I think it was like meant to be part of this. I'm in character as Johnny Rotten because I mean, Chris Evans yeah. Tonight.
Well,
tonight, Chris, I'm gonna be Johnny Rotten or John Lydon or something. And,
yeah.
It's a bit like Stars in Their Eyes. Kind of parody.
Well, it was Black Grape, wasn't it?
Yeah, Black Grape. Because the Mondays had split up for a couple of years or so by that point, and then after his swear word laden performance, and Chris Evans weren't allowed to do TFI live anymore, wasn't he?
No, I don't think. I think. Well, certainly that was
by all accounts, he was pretty lucky. It didn't get.
Taken off the air,
cancelled outright.
Yeah.
I think that was the compromise. Really, we'll keep you on, but you've got to pre-record it now.
From what I heard, is Shaun Ryder never actually meant to say that. Right, it was in his head, and it came out.
Yeah. I think
maybe he was saying F because of what he'd done to the lass, and thought, oh, I'm in a hell of a lot of trouble now.
Because I think when he'd been briefly interviewed before,
yes, because he made his way down to the stage, didn't he? The band were already on stage. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's where he slapped. That's where he gives this girl, like I say, girl, young lady, just gives her a slap.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and watch that now.
It's not like the camera suddenly cuts away or anything. You see he's panning along with him as he's walking to the stage.
Yeah.
You can't miss it. But like no one really seems to remember that.
No, I can't say that I did.
Oh, you've got to look it up after we've finished.
Yeah, no, I will do for definite.
Yeah, look up Sean Ryder TFI Friday. Just look.
What a dick!
Giving a woman a right whack across the head for no reason.
I knew it was a bit of a, just his attitude and everything, a bit swagger and all the rest of it.
it was a deliberate thing. Right, we're nearly at 10 o'clock, and I did say that 2 hours would probably be the maximum for this. I mean,
I think so.
About a lot. There's probably some stuff that we could have talked about for a lot longer. I know with Top of the Pops, there was so much to do, to do with Top of the Pops.
I had memories to just share, but we never got around to it. So
well, yeah, but if we might do a particular Top of the Pops centric episode one day. Yeah. For those of you who are still in with the chat in the chat, or those watching on replay, thank you first and foremost. And I've made notes of what at least the next few editions we're going to be talking about. We're going to have a different topic every fortnight. Maybe some topics will be more interesting to people than others, but it's just stuff that we find interesting, Jason and I. And we're going to be thinking of more ideas because we want this series to run for as long as possible without us two and without the viewers getting bored of it. So anything music related, if anyone does have any suggestions for future editions, then please leave them in the comments or get in touch with me on my usual social medias. I think go on, Jace.
All I was going to say was I have got one suggestion. I will just get people's opinion when they're watching this. Favorite music videos.
Favorite what?
Music videos.
Oh, just favorite music video, right? Well, I mean,
putting it out there
on the schedule. Yeah, I mean, I could add it at some point. In fact, I probably will actually, but that's going to be quite some ways down the line. People don't bother leaving any of that in the comments or anything because it's going to be weeks and weeks before we get to that. We've got other things to discuss first. Ignore Jason. He's been back on my channel, a more professional channel, for 2 hours now, and he's trying to take it over already. Look. On that note, I want to say thank you again, everyone who's watched either live or on demand. Like I say, leave your comments and your suggestions for future old Sodcasts, but from this old sod, Jason Clow at Not Suitable for Mum, and from myself, Jimmy Barnes. I want to say thank you, and please will you join us in 2 weeks' time, Jason? Unless you're going to cancel on me at the last minute.
Not as far as I know.
Oh, good, because we may have to slightly alter the schedule sometimes because Jason goes away for periods, and but we'll be back at some. We'll be back in 2 weeks, definitely, is what we're saying, unless anything serious happens.
Last minute, yeah. My leg's fallen off.
Keep an eye out on, the YouTube community tab. If I've got to make any changes, then I'll announce them on there. But thanks, Jason, for joining me today. Thank you
for having me, mate.
One more time. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for edition number 2 of the old Sodcast. Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See ya.